Hey, welcome back to the channel. I'm hanging out in my little Minecraft world again and letting the drama unfold one story at a time. If you're new here, this is your cozy corner of the internet where we judge strangers, laugh at karma, and maybe feel just a little bit better about our own lives. Before we begin, I want to say a quick thank you. In the last video, I've got 3 comments within just a couple of hours after uploading, which is just mind-blowing to me. Thank you guys for your support, and thank you to everyone who has been coming back to listen to these Reddit stories. Now, today's first story is called I Found My Sex Tapes on a Hidden Camera, posted online. And yeah, the audacity is absolutely breathtaking. Imagine living with someone you trust, only to find out they've been recording your most private moments and posting them online for strangers. The betrayal here isn't just illegal, it's personal, calculating, and cold. And the worst part? They actually thought they could get away with it. But trust me, that's just the start. There's a fake pregnancy, a lawsuit that backfired hard, and one best friend who blew up a life just to steal a paycheck. Let's get into it, starting with the girlfriend who turned hidden cameras into a full-blown revenge porn operation. I was dating this girl, Carly, for about 9 months. We met through mutual friends, clicked almost immediately, and honestly, I thought she was the one. She was funny, smart, affectionate, a little intense at times, sure, but who isn't? Things move fast, too fast, in hindsight. She moved in with me after just 3 months of dating, and back then that felt romantic. Like, we were inseparable anyway, so why not just live together? At first it was great. She helped decorate the apartment, cooked with me most nights, and even got into my weird routines, like setting up movie nights with ridiculous snack combinations. We had this cozy rhythm going, and I didn't think twice when she suggested installing a few extra security cameras around the apartment. Her reasoning? She'd had a break-in at her last place, and it made her nervous. I didn't love the idea of cameras inside, but she said they were just motion-triggered and only pointed at the doors and windows. I figured, sure, if it makes her feel safer. A few weeks later, I started noticing strange little things, like tiny red or blue blinking lights in weird spots. At first, I thought it was maybe just power indicators or reflections from devices. But one night, while I was brushing my teeth, I saw a blinking light coming from the air vent near the ceiling. That one gave me pause. I asked Carly about it and she laughed, said I was being paranoid. It's probably just from the thermostat, she said without even looking up from her phone. Except, the thermostat is in the hallway, nowhere near the bathroom. And that light? It definitely wasn't there when I moved in. The next day, while she was out, I got up on a step stool and opened the vent. Inside was a tiny black camera, no larger than a thumb drive, with a blinking blue light. I pulled it out, hands shaking. It was wired to a small battery pack, taped to the inside of the vent. That's when my stomach dropped. I checked the rest of the apartment, the bookshelf, behind the TV, in the bedroom, inside a fake smoke detector above the bed. There were 5 cameras total, 5, all discreetly hidden, all active. Here's the thing, Carly worked in tech. She told me she'd done some freelance work in cybersecurity, so she knew her way around small devices and networks. It clicked all at once. She hadn't just set up security cameras, she'd been recording us, all of us, everything. I confronted her that night and at first she denied it, said I was jumping to conclusions that maybe a previous tenant had installed them. I didn't even respond to that one. I just held up the camera I'd pulled from the vent and said, "You really want to try that again?" That's when she switched gears, full tears, full meltdown. "I just wanted to feel close to you all the time," she said. "It's not like I showed it to anyone. I deleted the files, I swear." But that wasn't even the worst part. Later that week, while digging through our shared laptop, I found a browser history full of forums and camming sites. Not just visits, uploads. The usernames were different, but the emails, all linked back to Carly. She hadn't just recorded us, she'd been monetizing the footage. Private moments, intimate ones I didn't even remember happening. All posted online to anonymous profiles, complete with tags and fake names. Her excuse? "It's not like anyone could tell it was you." That line honestly knocked the breath out of me. Like, that made it fine. I spent the next 2 days gathering everything I could. Screenshots, download links, metadata, email logins, every trace of her digital footprint. I copied the drive, printed out timelines, saved emails to a USB, and went straight to the police. The officer I spoke to didn't even blink. He said it happens more than people realize. Partners recording each other without consent, then uploading it for views or money. But in this case, because it crossed into revenge porn laws and illegal wiretapping, they could take action immediately. Carly was arrested 2 weeks later. She cried again, this time in court. Claimed she was just lonely, that she didn't mean harm, that it was just curiosity. But the prosecutor laid it all out. The equipment, the uploads, the money trails, the usernames. She got hit with multiple charges, including invasion of privacy and distribution without consent. Her face when they read the charges, I don't know how to describe it. Like she couldn't believe she was being held accountable. Honestly, neither could I. She pled guilty to avoid trial, got a year of probation, mandatory therapy, and had to register in a database I won't name here. Her accounts were seized. The sites took the videos down after legal threats, but the damage was done. You can't exactly unsee yourself posted online like that. If you've made it this far into the chaos, you're as addicted to Reddit drama as I am. Make sure to subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. I need to know I'm not the only one losing sleep over stories like this. I moved out 2 months later. New apartment, no cameras, no vents I haven't personally unscrewed and triple checked. It still messes with my head, knowing how easily trust can be weaponized, but at least now I know the signs. Imagine going through all that just to learn your partner was running a side hustle using your life. That's not even betrayal. That's something darker, something calculated. She didn't just break trust, she monetized it. But if you think that level of betrayal is insane, wait until you hear how one woman faked a pregnancy and then sued the guy for abandonment. So this all started when I broke up with my ex, Melissa. We'd been dating for about a year and a half, and while the first few months were great, things started going sideways after we moved in together. She was possessive, jealous, always needing to know where I was and who I was with, and God help me if I didn't answer a text within 10 minutes. Still, I tried to make it work longer than I should have, because breaking up felt like giving up. But eventually I realized I wasn't in a relationship. I was in a hostage situation with a shared Netflix account. When I finally broke things off, she didn't take it well. I moved out that same weekend, crashed with a friend while I found a new place, and honestly thought that was the end of it. We'd go our separate ways, block each other on socials, maybe do the whole awkward ex sighting at a coffee shop thing someday. Classic clean break, right? Yeah. Number. Exactly 3 days after the breakup, Melissa called me. Not texted, called, which was weird already. Her voice was shaky, and she opened with, "We need to talk." It's serious. I was bracing myself for something like, "I accidentally adopted a dog in your name," or "I crashed your car." But nope. She told me she was pregnant, and not just a few weeks, let's talk about what to do, pregnant. No, she said she was 3 months along and hadn't told me yet because she was scared, that she wanted to wait until she was sure everything was okay. She even threw in that she was just about to tell me before the breakup. Of course she was. Now look, I'm not heartless. If she was pregnant, I would have stepped up. We weren't good as a couple, but I'm not the type to run from that responsibility. So I stayed calm. I asked her when her first doctor's appointment was. She got cagey. I asked to go with her next time. More cagey. So I asked the obvious question, could I see the ultrasound? That's when the story started falling apart. The next day, she sent me a blurry photo of an ultrasound that looked like she'd printed it off Google Images at 3 a.m. I reverse searched it, found the same picture on a pregnancy blog from 2012. I didn't say anything right away, just waited to see what she'd do, and what she did next. That's when everything unraveled. She texted me again the following evening, saying she had a checkup scheduled, but only patients were allowed due to policy. Convenient. Then, not 5 minutes later, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. The message said, "Hello, this is Dr. Langston. Melissa's doing fine. We confirmed the pregnancy is progressing normally." It was signed off with a smiley face emoji. Not even kidding, a doctor using emoji in a medical update. I couldn't decide if I was more insulted by the scam or the laziness of it. I Googled the number. It was registered under her sister's name, so I called the number directly. And guess who picked up? Melissa's sister. She didn't even try to change her voice. I said, "Hey, Dr. Langston, how's the baby?" There was this long pause and then a panicked hang-up. And here's where it gets absurd. When I confronted Melissa, she immediately burst into tears. Not apologies, just tears and screaming, and how could you accuse me of lying about something like this? I told her I knew about the fake ultrasound, the number, her sister, all of it. Her tone switched again, just like flipping a light switch. She went cold and quiet and said, "You're going to regret not supporting me through this." I thought she meant emotionally, maybe a breakup tantrum. I was wrong. 3 weeks later, I got served. Melissa was suing me for emotional abandonment of a pregnant partner, a civil suit. Apparently, in our state, she'd found some obscure legal clause that allows for damages if a domestic partner shows gross negligence during a confirmed pregnancy. Except there was no confirmed pregnancy, and now I had to prove it. She showed up in court with a stack of clearly doctored records, including one ultrasound that still had the watermark from a Pinterest post. Her legal team was just a lawyer she found on Reddit, who'd passed the bar in another state but couldn't actually represent her. It was a circus, so I brought the receipts. Reverse image searches, screenshots, a transcript of the fake doctor text, and even a voice recording of her sister admitting the whole thing. I laid it all out in front of the judge like I was presenting a science fair project called Why You Shouldn't Date Sociopaths. That's when everything fell apart for her. The judge dismissed her claim with the kind of expression you usually reserve for people who show up to court wearing pajama pants. But I wasn't done. I countersued. Defamation, harassment, and emotional distress. I had enough evidence to make it stick, and this time I had actual legal representation. Her whole story collapsed under pressure. Her own sister testified to avoid perjury. I won the countersuit. She had to pay damages, issue a formal apology, and the kicker. The story made the rounds in a few legal Reddit threads. Someone screenshotted her ultrasound, and it became a meme. I don't usually take joy in watching someone's life implode, but in this case, I made an exception. You almost have to admire the dedication to the bit. Faking a pregnancy is one thing, but trying to turn it into a lawsuit? That's Olympic-level commitment to delusion, but the wildest betrayals always seem to come from the people closest to us, like this next guy's so-called best friend. I've known Sean since the 3rd grade. We grew up on the same street, rode bikes together, got into trouble together, and eventually ended up in the same college. If you had told me 10 years ago that he'd be the person to absolutely destroy my life, professionally, financially, and personally, I would have laughed in your face. We were that close. After college, I had the idea to start a consulting agency. Nothing massive, just local small businesses, branding, some light marketing, helping mum and pop shops get online. Sean had always been good with people and sales, and I was more technical. It seemed like the perfect fit. So we launched the business as co-founders, split 50-50, and spent the first 2 years grinding our way up from side gigs to actual clients. Things were good. Stressful, yeah, but good. We were turning a profit, growing steadily, and we even hired a few part-time contractors to help with client work. By year 3, we had a solid roster of ongoing clients and a reputation that got us referrals. I trusted Sean with pretty much everything: finances, accounts, client meetings, vendor relationships. We'd built this thing together, brick by brick. That's probably why I didn't notice how many bricks were disappearing. It started small. One of our long-term clients emailed me directly, asking why we'd suddenly increased their rate. I was confused. We hadn't. I checked our shared documents and didn't see any change in their billing. But when I opened our invoice software, there it was. A new version of the invoice marked up by 30% sent from my email. Except I hadn't sent it. I figured it was a simple mix-up. Maybe Sean had updated something and forgot to loop me in. I asked him about it and he brushed it off. Said the client requested more services and it was just a miscommunication. His tone was weird, but I didn't think much of it. I chalked it up to growing pains. Then came the breaking point. A client pulled me aside during a networking event and said, "Hey, by the way, I hope there are no hard feelings about you backing out of the merger." I just blinked at him. "What merger?" He looked confused. "Sean told me you didn't want to move forward. Said you weren't confident about scaling." I didn't even know we had a merger offer. This wasn't just an internal misstep. This was intentional. And still, I tried to believe it was a misunderstanding, until one of our newer clients forwarded me an email that I had sent them. Except the tone was completely off, the grammar sloppy, and the signature. It was my name, but with Sean's cell number listed underneath. That's when it finally clicked. He wasn't just doing things behind my back, he was impersonating me. What happened next? Nobody saw it coming. I dug through our systems, our email logs, our CRM. Turns out Sean had set up email forwarding rules to redirect any messages involving finances or major client decisions right into a private folder I didn't have access to. He'd been slowly rerouting clients to work directly with him, adjusting invoices and building relationships as me, while framing me as flaky, unreliable, or disinterested. The kicker? He convinced our board, which included 2 investors we'd brought on last year, that I was the problem, that I was no longer fit to lead. I was removed from my own company within a week, fired from the business I built. And the cherry on top? Sean offered to buy out my shares for pennies on the dollar. I should have seen it coming. But when betrayal wears the face of your best friend, your brain doesn't catch up fast enough. You want to believe you're just being paranoid, that it's fixable, that it's not this bad. But it was. I lost everything in a month. Clients, reputation, income. My inbox was full of confused messages from people asking what happened, why I was disappearing, and if I was okay. Meanwhile, Sean was making public LinkedIn posts about navigating difficult leadership transitions and stepping up during times of change. It was unreal, like watching someone steal your identity in broad daylight and somehow getting applause for it. But here's where the story flips. One of our old clients, a guy I'd helped get his entire business off the ground, reached out privately. He told me something weird was going on with his contract, that he'd gotten a pitch from Sean to sign a new one, but the terms were shady. When he asked questions, Sean got aggressive, so this client forwarded the pitch to me. It was another forged email, same writing style, same fake tone, but this time the attached PDF still had Sean's edit history in the metadata. Classic amateur mistake. I had him. That was the start of the unraveling. With that document, I was able to dig deeper and build a paper trail. Dozens of forged contracts, doctored invoices, backdated meeting logs. I brought everything to a lawyer who lit up like it was Christmas morning. We filed a lawsuit for fraud, misrepresentation, identity theft, and breach of fiduciary duty. Sean's reaction? He went full victim mode, claimed I had manipulated the documents, that this was just a bitter ex-employee with a vendetta. But the evidence spoke for itself. We subpoenaed the platform logs, client testimony, even timestamps from his email forwards, and suddenly the whole plan fell apart. The board distanced themselves fast. Clients dropped him. His reputation went up in flames. He tried to settle quietly, offered me a 6-figure payout to walk away and sign an NDA. I refused. We went to court, and I won. He's now barred from holding an executive position for 5 years, owes me damages and the company we built together. It collapsed 3 months after the verdict. Nobody trusted him, and without me running the operations, it just fell apart. The funny part, he still tried to spin it online, posted a photo of a beach vacation with the caption, "Taking time to reflect after a challenging chapter." Bigger things ahead, bro. You're not manifesting success. You're dodging subpoenas. The audacity was wild, like full mask-off levels of shameless. People ask me now if I regret starting the business with him. And honestly, number. I regret trusting him too much, but I don't regret building something. Because I also built the evidence that tore him down. He wrote the script for his own downfall. I just read it aloud, but that betrayal was just the beginning. Let me tell you about the next person, whose sister destroyed his wedding with one email. I was supposed to get married last spring. Everything was planned down to the tiniest detail. The venue was paid for, the guest list finalized, and the invitations had already gone out. My fiancée Ava and I had been together for 4 years, and I honestly thought she was the one. She had this calm steadiness that balanced out my anxious brain, and we rarely fought about anything that mattered. Or at least, that's what I thought. Then, exactly 11 days before the wedding, I got an anonymous email. It was sent from a burner account. No name, no signature, just a subject line that said, "Ask Ava where she was last Thursday." Inside the email, it claimed Ava had been cheating on me with a coworker. There were vague details, mentions of a business trip that wasn't really business, a photo of her walking into a hotel with a man, from behind and blurry as hell, and a final line that said, "You deserve better." At first I laughed. literally out loud. It felt like spam. I even called Ava and told her someone was messing with us, just in case she got a weird message too. But then I went back and stared at that photo. Something about it started to get under my skin. The timestamp matched a night when Ava had said she was working late. I remember it clearly because I had dinner with my sister that night, and I'd mentioned missing Ava. My sister even joked, she probably just needed a break from your stress. Ha, that aged well. The next day, I asked Ava about the photo. I didn't accuse her. I just said, hey, someone sent me this weird email, and I figured I should tell you. Her reaction didn't sit right. She froze, then asked to see the email. When I showed it to her, she immediately started crying. Not defensive crying, guilty crying. You know the difference. I asked her if it was true. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. She just kept saying it was a mistake, over and over again, so I called it off. 11 days before the wedding, I cancelled everything. My parents were stunned. Her parents were furious. Some people assumed I had done something wrong, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to marry someone who couldn't tell me the truth, even when she was caught. We went our separate ways. She moved out. I boxed up the wedding stuff, returned what I could, and ghosted everyone who tried to bring it up. And that should have been the end of it. It should have been the worst part, but then came the breaking point. A year later, literally a full year, my cousin hosted a family reunion barbecue. I hadn't seen a lot of my extended family since the cancelled wedding, and I figured enough time had passed. Maybe I could show up, be civil, eat some ribs, and leave early if things got weird. What I didn't expect was for Ava's name to come up, or for my sister, my actual sister Megan, to bring it up like she was just making conversation. We were standing by the grill when she said, "It's crazy how one anonymous email changed your whole life, huh?" And she smiled. This little smirk that didn't match the words, like she was proud of something no one else knew about. My stomach turned. I hadn't talked about the email in over a year. Nobody even knew the contents except Ava and me. I never shared it. I asked her what she meant. She laughed it off, said something like, "Oh, you know that email, the one that blew everything up." I asked her again, directly this time, if she had anything to do with it, and she froze, dead silent, eyes wide. That panicked, caught in the headlights look you see in courtroom dramas right before someone blurts out a confession. Then, in the most casual voice she could muster, she said, "Well, I just didn't want you to make a mistake." It took me a full 10 seconds to register what she was saying. She wrote the email. She sent it. I just stood there, holding a paper plate with half a hamburger on it, realizing that my own sister nuked my relationship because, what? She didn't like Ava? She wanted me single forever? Turns out, yeah, that's pretty much exactly it. She admitted that she felt like I was choosing Ava over family, that once I got married, things would never be the same, and she'd end up alone. So she wrote the email, faked the photo using a blurry stock image, and even timed it for when she knew Ava had said she was working late. And remember that dinner I had with Megan that night? The one where I mentioned Ava working late? She used that conversation as the setup for the lie. What happened next? Nobody saw it coming. I lost it. Like full-on raised voice, family BBQ in flames type of situation. Everyone turned and stared as I asked her in front of everyone, "Do you even realize what you did to my life?" To hers, Megan tried to backpedal, saying Ava didn't deny it. So technically it wasn't entirely her fault. As if gaslighting your brother into cancelling his wedding is just a quirky personality trait. My uncle stepped in and pulled me aside before things got physical. I left early, but the damage was done. To her this time. Word got around, fast. Our family was split for a while. Half thought I was overreacting. The other half thought Megan was a manipulative monster. My mom eventually confronted her, and Megan admitted it all again. This time with less smugness and more tears. But the damage wasn't just social. Ava found out. She reached out to me for the first time in a year. Said she saw a post one of our mutual friends made about the reunion drama, and realized what had happened. We met for coffee, talked for hours. She told me she hadn't cheated, that the crying, the "it was a mistake" line, it was all panic. She thought I had found out about something else entirely. Turns out she had been planning a surprise gift for me and thought I had discovered that she snooped through my computer for it. So yeah, her guilt wasn't cheating. It was a completely different kind of secret. one that got misread at the worst possible time. We didn't get back together. Too much time had passed and too much had broken between us. But we left on good terms. We forgave each other, hugged it out. And for the first time since that anonymous email, I felt like I could finally breathe. As for Megan, I haven't spoken to her in over a year now. She's tried texting, tried apologizing. But honestly, I don't have the energy for someone who would sabotage my future just to keep things comfortable for herself. Some people don't need to be enemies to ruin your life. Sometimes they just need to feel entitled to it. And the worst part? She still thinks she did the right thing. Imagine being that confidently wrong. But if you think that's bad family drama, wait until you hear what happened when this guy let his brother borrow his house for one weekend. My grandmother passed away last spring. It wasn't unexpected, she'd been sick for a while, but it still hit hard. She basically raised me when my parents were working non-stop, and when the funeral date came through, I packed up and left town for 4 days to be with my extended family. The whole thing was emotional and chaotic, and the last thing I needed to worry about was my house. Enter my brother Ryan. Well, he's always been the kind of person you don't fully trust, but you want to. He's younger than me by 3 years, never quite got his life together, floats from job to job, lives on couches more than actual leases, but he's charming. He's the kind of guy who can screw up massively, apologize once, and somehow still get invited to Christmas dinner. So when he offered to house sit for me while I was away, I hesitated. But I said yes. My cat liked him. He knew how to water the plants, and I figured, hey, he can crash at my place, get some space from his weird roommate, and I'll come back to a clean house and a happy pet. I even left him a gift card for groceries. What could go wrong? That question aged like milk. I came home Sunday evening after a long drive, exhausted and emotionally drained. The minute I walked through the door, something felt off. There was this weird smell, a mix of alcohol, sweat, and something I couldn't quite identify. The air felt thick, the lights were on in every room, and the living room looked like it had been hit by a low-budget apocalypse. Empty bottles everywhere, stained cushions. One of my lamps was straight up missing. There were sticky footprints leading down the hallway, and, I wish I was making this up, someone had hung a bra from my ceiling fan. I froze, just stood there for a second trying to make sense of the scene. Then I saw Ryan's jacket thrown over the back of my dining chair, along with a pair of red lace underwear that, for very obvious reasons, did not belong to my late grandmother's funeral. I called him immediately. No answer. I texted, "What the hell happened in my house?" 10 minutes later, he replied with the most casual text I've ever seen in my life. "Sorry, bro, didn't think you'd be home so early." That's when everything unraveled. I checked my security cam footage, or at least I tried to, because the cameras I had set up in the living room and kitchen disconnected. Someone had unplugged them. The backyard cam was still active, though. And when I went back through the cloud footage, what I saw made my stomach turn. At one point, at least 10 people walked into my house, some wearing masks, some carrying bags. One dude brought what looked like a professional lighting setup, like soft boxes, my backyard, which usually hosts squirrels and maybe a bird bath. Full-on crowd, drinking, smoking, shouting. And at one point, I swear someone was wearing a leather harness and roller skates. I didn't even know you could combine those things, but here we are. At that point, I figured it had to be a party, a really, really bad one. But then I found a clue that sent everything spiraling into full horror movie territory. On my TV stand was a printed piece of paper with a URL written in Sharpie. No title, just a link. Morbid curiosity got the better of me, so I typed it into a private browser. It led to a recording on an adult live streaming site. The video was 4 hours long, and yes, it was filmed in my house. From the living room, from the hallway, from my kitchen counter, where I make my coffee every morning. It was an orgy, like a full-blown, multi-angle sponsored stream. My furniture was background decor for a group of people doing things I can't even describe without needing a shower after. And there, right in the center of the action, Ryan, smiling, waving to the camera, wearing my hoodie. You ever go through all 5 stages of grief in under 2 minutes? Because that was me. I called him again. This time I left a voicemail that I'm pretty sure could be used as a soundtrack in a courtroom. He didn't respond, So I drove straight to the police station and filed a report for unlawful use of property, trespassing, and unauthorized filming in a private residence. The officer almost didn't believe me until I showed him the link. Then came the breaking point. Turns out the site Ryan streamed on was known for hosting content creators who rented out Airbnbs and borrowed places for special events. They had disclaimers about requiring all parties to verify location rights, and, plot twist, Ryan had submitted a forged document claiming to be the owner of the home. Yeah, he pretended to own my house. He even forged my signature. When I showed the police my actual ID deed and proof of residence, they added fraud and identity theft to the case. The kicker? One of the participants had already filed a legal complaint against Ryan for filming them without proper consent. So the footage he made money off of, now being used as evidence against him. You almost have to admire the self-sabotage. He was arrested within 2 weeks. The court process took months, but I didn't back down. He tried to downplay everything, said it was just one party, claimed the footage was performance art. Like that made it better somehow. His lawyer even said, "Your Honor, my client was simply misguided." Misguided? Number. He was filming an adult live stream in my house while I was burying our grandmother. There's no universe where that's a misstep. Eventually, he took a plea deal. Got slapped with fines, community service, and is now banned from all adult content platforms that require location verification, which is a weird sentence to hear in real life, but there you go. As for my house, I hired a cleaning crew, replaced the furniture, repainted the walls, and installed cameras. He can't turn off without physically ripping them out of the drywall. The cat is fine, by the way, probably traumatized, but fine. We haven't spoken since. He texted once. Didn't mean for things to go so far. I left it on red, because going too far is sneaking an extra cookie from the jar. Not hosting a live-streamed group session in your brother's home while he's grieving. This wasn't a mistake. It was a choice, and he made it. With lighting setups, no less. And speaking of footage, this next story proves that not all home improvement projects are harmless. It started with a bathroom remodel. I had just bought my first home, a small but cozy fixer-upper in a quiet neighborhood. The kind of place that smelled like old carpet and potential. The bathroom was a mess when I moved in. Cracked tile, peeling paint, a vanity that looked like it had survived a flood, and a fire, possibly at the same time. So I decided to splurge a bit and hire a professional to do it right. You know, treat myself to one thing done properly before I inevitably destroyed something else, DIYing the kitchen. That's how I found Rick. He was a solo contractor who came highly recommended on a local Facebook group. He had a portfolio, references, and one of those confident, "don't worry, I've seen worse" kind of attitudes. Plus, his quote was affordable without being suspiciously cheap. I met him twice before the job started, and both times he was respectful, chatty, borderline boring, which for a contractor is kind of perfect. The remodel took about a week. Rick showed up every day on time, cleaned up after himself, and even offered to fix a couple loose tiles in the kitchen while he was there. When the job was done, the bathroom looked amazing. Bright, clean, modern. I paid him, left a glowing review, and didn't think about it again, until 6 weeks later, when I dropped a hair tie behind the sink. I was reaching down along the side of the new vanity when I noticed something weird. A small round hole in the drywall, about the size of a dime. At first, I assumed it was just an installation screw that had been covered up or something minor like that. But when I looked closer, I could see a tiny glint of glass behind it. My stomach dropped. I unscrewed the vanity panel, heart pounding, and found a small black object wedged inside the wall. A pinhole camera, the kind that connects to Wi-Fi and streams live. It was pointed directly at the shower, and it was on. This was not just a nightmare scenario. This was the kind of thing you hear about and think, that would never happen to me, except it had. I was shaking. I called the police immediately and told them everything. They sent someone out that afternoon and confiscated the device. The officer who responded told me they'd seen this exact model before, part of a string of similar cases in the area. The pattern? Always solo contractors, always in bathrooms, always pointed exactly where you'd never want to be filmed. But that wasn't even the worst part. When they traced the IP address, they found the footage was being streamed. Live. On a site that was essentially a marketplace for illegal voyeur content. And Rick? He wasn't just some sleazy contractor with a weird hobby. He was one of their top uploaders. Yeah, let that sink in. He had done this before, dozens of times, in homes all over the city. He'd been installing hidden cameras in light fixtures, vents, baseboards, anywhere he could get away with it, for years. Some of the footage dated back over a decade. I was absolutely sick. The detective told me they were building a case against him already, but until then, they didn't have anyone willing to go on the record. Most victims either didn't know or didn't want the exposure. No pun intended. But I agreed to cooperate. I wanted him stopped. This is where patience finally snapped. I gave the police full access to my Wi-Fi logs, router history, and even set up a dummy schedule, letting Rick think I was gone for long stretches during the day, when in reality, the cops were monitoring the stream from a secure setup across the street. And then he took the bait. One afternoon, Rick logged into the stream from a device they traced to his work van. Not only that, he also responded in a live chat, talking to viewers about what's coming next, and even mentioning my first name. That was all they needed. He was arrested the next morning outside a hardware store. When they raided his storage unit, they found boxes of equipment, cameras, hard drives, customer lists, footage catalogued by address. Some of the drives even had notes like good lighting and clean angle written on them. It was beyond disgusting. In court, his lawyer tried to argue it was a mental illness and that Rick had compulsive recording behavior. But that excuse didn't fly. The jury heard from over a dozen victims. I testified too. He never looked at any of us once. Just sat there, blank-faced, as people described how he'd turned their private homes into sets for a crime they didn't even know was happening. He was sentenced to 15 years without parole. 15 years isn't enough, if you ask me. But it was something. Enough to send a message. Enough to make sure he wouldn't do it again. And most importantly, enough to give the rest of us some measure of closure. I had to sell the house. I couldn't stay there after that. Every creak, every hum of the HVAC system felt like a camera. I sleep with a white noise machine now and triple check every smoke detector. I don't trust anything that plugs into a wall anymore. You think something like that will mess with your head for a week, maybe a month, but the truth is, it lingers. It rewires your sense of safety. It makes you second guess every contractor, every delivery guy, every noise in the drywall. And what still gets me is that he probably would have kept getting away with it if I hadn't dropped a hair tie. The whole thing feels like a horror story that accidentally got stuck in the home renovation section of life. He turned privacy into profit, but in the end, the very thing he used to spy on people became the evidence that took him down. Karma showed up early, and with tech support, but what if the person spying on you was your own spouse? That's exactly what happened to the next guy. I always thought I was a pretty open book. I go to work, I come home, I walk the dog, I rinse and repeat. My wife, Lauren, used to joke that I was the most predictable man on earth. And honestly, she wasn't wrong. But predictability apparently only works until someone wants to believe you're hiding something. A few months ago, Lauren started getting paranoid. Subtle at first. Little comments like, "You've been gone longer than usual," or "You never used to take that route home." I brushed it off. We'd both been stressed lately, and I figured it was just nerves. We'd been married 5 years, and while things weren't perfect, they weren't divorce-level bad. That's what I thought. Then one night, I came home from work, and she was already in the kitchen, arms crossed, face like stone. She asked me where I'd been. I told her the truth. I'd stopped by a little diner on the east side for coffee. She raised her eyebrows and said, "Every Friday for the past 2 months?" I froze. Because, yeah, I had. Then came the sentence that changed everything. "I know you've been seeing another woman." I blinked. "What?" She tossed a small black device onto the table, a GPS tracker, one of those clip-on ones people use for fleet cars or luggage. She'd hidden it under my bumper. Apparently she'd been tracking me for weeks, watching my routines. And what set her off? The fact that I kept driving across town, to a residential area, and staying there for hours at a time. I asked her how she found it. She said she'd bought it online after seeing a Reddit thread about cheaters who get sloppy. So, that's where we're at, I guess. Marriage advice from r/petty revenge. She started shouting. Called me a liar, a coward, a homewrecker. Said she had evidence. Said she'd already spoken to a divorce lawyer and was posting the truth online so people would know what kind of man I really was. What happened next? Nobody saw it coming. Because the other woman I'd been visiting was my sister. Her name's Amanda. We were close as kids, but she cut contact with everyone in the family about 6 years ago after marrying a guy none of us liked. Controlling, jealous, the kind of guy who could make you feel unsafe with just a stare. I didn't hear from her for years, until this summer when she called me out of the blue. She was crying, said she needed help getting out. No money, no support system, and terrified he'd find out if she went public. So I started visiting her, quietly, helping her find a lawyer, get her documents in order, line up a place to stay. I didn't tell Lauren, not because I was hiding something bad, but because Amanda begged me not to involve anyone. She didn't want her name getting out in case it got back to her husband. And, yeah, maybe I should have said something. But when someone's scared for their life, you honor their request for privacy. But that wasn't even the worst part. Lauren didn't just assume I was cheating. She posted about it, online, publicly, tagged me in a long Facebook rant about how I'd been betraying her for months, how I'd emotionally abandoned her, and how she deserved better than a liar. My phone exploded within the hour. Friends, co-workers, my boss, everyone saw it. And then, she uploaded photos, screenshots from a GPS tracking app, a blurry image of Amanda's front door from Google Maps, and a caption that said, "The house where he goes to cheat." Every Friday. For months, this wasn't just embarrassing. It was dangerous, because Amanda's husband, he had people watching her. And now, thanks to Lauren's post, she was exposed. I confronted Lauren and finally told her everything. I showed her texts, legal paperwork, the receipts from the lawyer's office, even an Uber ride I paid for to get Amanda to a shelter one night. Lauren just stood there, blinking, slowly realizing how badly she had messed up. She didn't apologize, not right away. She just said, "You should have told me." No acknowledgement of what she'd done, no apology to Amanda, just blame. You almost have to admire the audacity. The fallout was massive. I deleted my social media. Amanda had to move again, fast. We filed a restraining order against her ex, just in case. Meanwhile, Lauren tried to quietly walk back her accusations, telling people it was a misunderstanding and that she'd acted emotionally. "Oh, so we're doing that now?" I moved out 3 weeks later. We're in the middle of a divorce. No lawyers needed. I just want peace. She keeps texting me, saying she didn't mean for things to go that far, that she was just scared of losing me. But here's the thing. If you treat someone like a criminal long enough, eventually they stop trying to prove their innocence. They just leave. Lauren turned paranoia into a self-fulfilling prophecy. She wanted to catch me cheating so badly that she destroyed the very relationship she thought she was saving. And I'll never get that time back with Amanda. The moments we could have spent healing instead of hiding. From betrayal to blackmail, the next story is about a teenager who took things way too far. It started with a phone call I never expected to get. The school principal left me a voicemail saying it was urgent and that I needed to come in immediately. No context, just that my son was involved in something serious and that it couldn't be discussed over the phone. You know that feeling when your stomach just drops, like gravity decided to double down? Yeah, that. I assumed maybe he got into a fight or vandalized something dumb. He's 15, hormonal, moody, the usual teenage stuff. But when I walked into that office and saw a police officer sitting there beside the principal, I knew it was worse than dumb graffiti. That's when they dropped the bomb. My son had accused one of his teachers, Miss Patel, of sending him inappropriate photos and messages. I couldn't breathe. The school had already contacted authorities, the teacher had been suspended pending investigation, and they were required by law to notify the parents involved. They asked if we'd be willing to let them search his devices for additional evidence. My brain was spinning. All I could do was nod. They pulled up screenshots, a Discord chat log, complete with photos that looked explicit. The username was hers, the profile pic matched, the timestamps aligned with school hours. My son sat there the whole time with this strange look on his face, like he was almost proud of himself for speaking up. And for a second, I believed him. I wanted to believe him, because the alternative was unthinkable. But that wasn't even the worst part, because when the detective stepped in to review the materials more closely, things started unraveling. Fast. The photos were too perfect. Two posed, lighting like a studio, and the metadata didn't match up. The photos had been created just 3 days earlier, yet the message logs stretched back over 2 weeks. One of the images still had remnants of AI noise near the background, like a bad Photoshop blur that hadn't been cleaned up properly. That's when they called in a digital forensics team. They analyzed the media, ran facial recognition, metadata, image history, the works, and within 48 hours the verdict was in. The entire thing was fake. The screenshots were fabricated using chat emulators, the images, deepfakes, built off old yearbook photos of Miss Patel and combined with AI-generated bodies. And here's where it gets absurd. My son had downloaded the tools from Reddit. There was an entire forum dedicated to deepfake revenge tactics, complete with step-by-step guides for creating evidence that could ruin someone's life. That was the breaking point. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He just shrugged and said, "She failed me on a paper I worked hard on. She deserved it. No remorse, no shame, just cold logic." I genuinely thought this couldn't get worse. I was wrong, because Ms. Patel, she'd already been doxxed. Someone had leaked her full name and school on social media after the accusation went public. Her fiancé left her. She was living with her sister across the state, unemployed, in hiding, and being harassed by strangers calling her a predator. All because my son, my kid, wanted revenge over a grade. The fallout hit like a sledgehammer. The school expelled him immediately. Juvenile charges were filed for defamation, harassment, and digital fraud. We had to hire an attorney. He's now banned from all public schools in our district and attending court-mandated counseling sessions while awaiting trial in juvenile court. And let me tell you, no punishment can fix what he did. He didn't just hurt her. He weaponized someone's face, their identity, their life, for a petty vendetta, and it worked, for a while. That's the scariest part. You almost have to sit back and ask, what happens when kids realize they can ruin lives with just a laptop and a grudge? I still don't know what hurt more, watching Ms. Patel's life burn down from a lie, or realizing that lie came from my own house. I wrote her a letter, apologized, told her how ashamed I was and how I wished I'd seen the signs sooner. She wrote back, just one sentence. "Your son didn't fail school. He failed humanity. That line still haunts me. He's still my son. I still love him. But I don't trust him. Not yet. And maybe not for a long time." And speaking of family destroying lives, you won't believe what this next woman did to her husband's career. Things started getting weird at work around the beginning of April. People were treating me differently, giving me side glances during meetings, taking forever to respond to emails, pulling back on collaboration without explanation. At first, I chalked it up to office politics or just stress, but when even my manager, who used to be super responsive, started avoiding direct eye contact, I knew something was up. Then I got pulled into HR. They called it a routine check-in, which we all know is code for someone dropped a grenade in your inbox and now you're being asked to explain why you were holding it. I sit down. 2 people from HR, 1 guy from legal, and a printout. My name on the email, my work email, but I didn't recognize the message. It was suggestive, like wildly inappropriate, and it had been sent to a coworker 2 floors up. Not just once, 3 times. I thought this was a prank, or a phishing thing. I denied everything, swore up and down I'd never written that. I asked when the emails were sent. Turns out 2 were on a Saturday morning, and the 3rd at 11:46 a.m. on a Tuesday, when I was in a Zoom call with a client. I had receipts, call logs, even screen recordings. Still, they froze my account and launched an internal investigation. Which was fair, I get it. They can't ignore this stuff. But that wasn't even the worst part, because 2 days later I was terminated. Not suspended, not reassigned, fired. Breach of conduct, they said. Violation of workplace communication policy. Just like that, career gone. And it wasn't until I got home and saw my wife's face that everything clicked. She was too calm, offered me tea, asked how the meeting went, like she didn't already know. And when I told her I'd been fired, she barely blinked. Just said, "Well, maybe it's a sign." That's when my stomach dropped. I waited until she left the house later that night, said she was going to give me space. I sat down at my personal laptop and started digging. I still had access to the router logs, so I checked the IP history. And what do you know? My work email had been accessed multiple times, from our home Wi-Fi, from her devices. She'd logged in while I was asleep, while I was at the gym, while I was out getting groceries. She was the sender. At first, I wanted to believe she was just checking my calendar or trying to help me out. But when I checked the sent folder and found drafts, messages mocking coworkers, complaining about my overwhelmed schedule, and flirty notes written in my voice, I knew this was way bigger than just curiosity. She was impersonating me. So I confronted her, calmly, quietly. I asked why, I asked how long, and she didn't even deny it. Her exact words, "I did it for us." Apparently she was tired of me putting work before family, said I was missing too much of the kids' lives, and her grand plan was to get me fired so I'd finally be around more. She thought if I lost my job, I'd have to stay home. We could rebuild, get closer, be a real family again. Imagine being that confidently wrong. She didn't expect I'd actually get fired. She thought HR would just issue a warning or maybe ask me to take a leave. But once the train left the station, she just let it crash. This is where patience finally snapped. I took everything I found, IP logs, device IDs, timestamps, and scheduled a formal appeal with HR. They were shocked, like jaws on the floor shocked. One of the tech guys verified the access logs and matched them to my wife's device MAC address. They couldn't reinstate me. The damage was already done, but they did issue a written statement clearing my name and offered a quiet settlement. I declined, because I had bigger plans. I filed for divorce 2 days later. Then came the lawsuit. Identity fraud, defamation, loss of income, emotional distress. My lawyer said it was one of the weirdest domestic sabotage cases she'd ever seen. And the best part? During the deposition, my wife tried to spin it all as an act of love. Said she only did it because she missed me, that she was protecting our marriage. They actually had to stop the recording at one point because one of the stenographers laughed out loud. This feels like a deleted scene from a sitcom. The court didn't buy it. She's now responsible for damages and court costs. I'm starting over. New job, new apartment, joint custody. And here's the kicker. She still sends me articles about how to parent through divorce, like she's some kind of expert. She didn't just ruin my job. She burned the bridge, salted the earth, and then tried to plant flowers on top of the crater. Want to talk about psychotic exes? This next woman literally faked a car crash. Breaking up with Kate was never going to be easy. I knew that going in. She wasn't exactly the type to go quietly, but I thought maybe if I was kind, direct, and respectful, she'd take it like an adult. We'd been dating for just under a year, and it had been getting rocky for a while. Too many fights, too many mood swings, and honestly, I was exhausted. So I sat her down one evening after dinner, told her I didn't think we were right for each other, and that it was better to end things now than drag it out. She didn't cry, didn't yell, just gave me this blank stare. Then she asked, "Is there someone else?" There wasn't. I told her that. She nodded, said, "Okay," and left. That should have been it. But 2 days later, I got a text from an unknown number. It was a picture of Kate in a hospital bed, bandaged up, tubes in her nose. The caption said, "Thought you should know what you did." I felt like I'd swallowed a brick. I immediately called the hospital. They confirmed she had been admitted that morning for injuries sustained in a car accident. No further details. I panicked. I blamed myself. I rushed over. When I got there, she was in a private room, alone, looking pale, like she'd been through hell. She smiled weakly and said, "Guess it just wasn't my time." She told me she'd been driving home from work, upset about the breakup, and she missed a red light. Got clipped by a truck. Broken ribs, mild concussion, sprained wrist. I sat by her bed for hours apologizing. She said it wasn't my fault, but that maybe this was the universe telling us we weren't finished. I stayed with her for the next 2 days, brought her snacks, picked up meds, took calls for her, even called her mum. She made me promise to stay a little longer just until she was out of the woods. It almost worked, but that wasn't even the worst part. Because on day 3, I got a message from someone I didn't expect, her ex. We'd never talked. I had no reason to trust him, but the message said, "Check the passenger side and ask her about Melissa." I didn't know what he meant at first, so the next day, while Kate was asleep, I stepped out and checked her car in the hospital parking lot. Passenger side, no damage, not a scratch. Driver's side had a minor dent, sure, but it looked like something from a fender bender. not a collision with a truck, and the airbag still intact. Then I looked up Melissa. Turns out she's a nurse at the hospital Kate was admitted to, and she also just happens to be one of Kate's best friends, someone I'd met briefly at a birthday dinner months ago. Now things were unraveling, fast. I started digging, pieced together timestamps, checked Google Maps history, looked up hospital policies, and then I did the one thing I probably should have done first. I looked at her wrist. No swelling, no brace, just a snug little wrap, like a prop. I finally confronted her that night. I asked point blank, "Kate, were you actually in a crash?" She blinked, didn't answer. So I showed her everything. The undamaged passenger side, the hospital staff list with Melissa's name, even a Reddit thread someone had posted anonymously asking, "Can a nurse help stage a fake hospital photo?" Her silence said it all. Then came the breaking point. She burst into tears, not the wounded soft sobs from earlier in the week, but full-blown, hysterical screaming. Accused me of spying on her, of being just like all the others, and said I was trying to gaslight her reality. I left. That night, blocked her number, changed the locks. The aftermath? Well, it escalated. Turns out this wasn't Kate's first stunt. Her ex, the one who warned me, had been through a similar breakup that ended with her threatening to overdose if he didn't take her back. Another ex said she filed a false harassment report after he tried to leave. It was a pattern. Her family eventually stepped in after a neighbor called them about Kate sitting on the curb outside my place at 2 a.m., screaming at the sky. They got her admitted for psychiatric evaluation. Last I heard, she was in a long-term care facility, finally getting the help she'd needed for years. You almost have to admire the audacity. Staging a car accident, faking injuries, enlisting a nurse friend to help pull it off. That's not just commitment, that's straight-up soap opera behavior. And all because I said, "I don't think we're right for each other." That was messy, but not as messy as this next woman's revenge plan involving her own wedding cake. I've been baking professionally for almost 8 years. Small town, word of mouth, custom cakes only. Weddings, baby showers, engagement parties, the works. I pride myself on quality. Ingredients sourced locally, never frozen, and I've never had a single issue with food safety. Not even a mild stomachache. So when I got a furious voicemail at 2 a.m., the night after a wedding I catered, saying I poisoned the bride's mother, I nearly dropped my phone. Turns out the mother of the groom had collapsed during the reception. She'd been rushed to the ER, and by morning she was in the ICU. The family was panicking, and guess what they had in common? They'd all eaten the wedding cake. And since I was the baker, that put me front and center for blame. Police contacted me later that morning. Routine stuff, they said. Just a few questions. They asked what went into the cake, where I sourced my flour, if anyone else had handled it after it left my kitchen. I told them the truth. I delivered it personally, just like I always do. The venue staff moved it into their back fridge, and that was it. But then came the kicker. Only one person got sick. Not the guests, not the staff, not the bride, not the groom, just the groom's mom. At first, the theory was maybe she had an allergy, or maybe something reacted with her medications. But when the toxicology report came back, the word intentional got thrown into the conversation. Someone had slipped something into the cake. Something toxic, not lethal in large doses, but incredibly dangerous for someone with a heart condition, like the groom's mother. And here's where it gets absurd. The bride didn't even try to hide it. Not really. Because once the detective started poking around, one of the venue employees came forward and said the bride had asked to decorate the top layer herself before the reception started. She'd pulled the cake into a side room, said she wanted to add a surprise topper. No one thought much of it at the time, but when they checked the security footage, yep, clear as day, the bride opening a bottle, pulling something out of her purse, and carefully applying something to one specific slice. The one slice that, you guessed it, was placed in front of her mother-in-law. You know those stories where you think, there's no way this person actually thought they'd get away with that? Yeah, that was this. Because not only did she tamper with the cake on camera, but she also told one of the bridesmaids, her best friend, about it. Bragged, actually. She always said I wasn't good enough. Let's see how she feels after a little stomach flu. Except it wasn't just food poisoning, it was actual rat poison. And the bridesmaid? immediately texted her own boyfriend about it, who then called the police. The bride had zero clue she was being investigated during her entire honeymoon. Meanwhile, I was sitting at home, thinking my business was ruined, fielding refund requests and getting nasty Yelp reviews from guests who hadn't even tasted the cake. My reputation was crumbling while this lunatic was sipping Mai Tais on a beach somewhere. Then came the breaking point. Detectives contacted me again, this time asking if I'd be willing to testify. They needed confirmation that the cake was untouched when I dropped it off, that I hadn't been involved in any way. I was more than happy to help. A week later, the bride was arrested on her honeymoon, in a hotel lobby, in front of her new husband, for attempted poisoning. You ever hear of a marriage that lasted less than a week? Because this one did. Apparently, once the truth came out, the groom completely flipped. He filed for an annulment before she even made it back to the States. His mother survived, by the way, barely, and is now suing her would-be daughter-in-law for attempted murder and emotional trauma. And me? I got a personal letter of apology from the police chief, then another from the groom's family, and then a massive spike in business after a local food blog wrote about how I'd helped catch a cake criminal. You almost have to admire the audacity. She weaponized fondant, actually tried to assassinate her MIL with a dessert, and then smiled through her wedding photos like she didn't just commit a literal felony during cocktail hour. Let's switch gears, but not the crazy. Next up, a nightmare roommate who deep cleaned a stranger's room while they slept. Living in a shared house has its ups and downs. You get company, you split rent, sometimes you even make friends for life. And sometimes you wake up at 3 in the morning to find your roommate's girlfriend rearranging your underwear drawer. Yeah, that happened. It started normal enough, me and 2 guys sharing a decent-sized rental house off campus. Everyone was chill, bills got paid, food stayed labeled, and the vibe was actually pretty great, until Justin started dating her. Her name was Lila. Blonde, obsessed with astrology, talked to the cat like it was a toddler, and had a weird habit of calling everyone babe, including me. Which, okay, maybe that's just her thing. But things got weird fast. At first it was little stuff. She started sleeping over. Then she stopped leaving. I'm talking. Toothbrush in the bathroom, half the fridge claimed. Her shampoo lined up next to mine in the shower like we shared it. We didn't. But it was fine, I told myself. Not worth a fight. It's Justin's girlfriend, not mine. That all changed the night I woke up and found her in my room. It was around 3 a.m. I remember because I checked my phone when I woke up to a soft clatter, like something plastic hitting the floor. My room was dark except for the hallway light bleeding through the half-open door. And standing there was Lila, in leggings, a hoodie, and holding one of my drawers open like she was shopping. She didn't even flinch when I sat up. "Oh, hey babe," she said like this was totally normal. "Your sock drawer was a mess. I couldn't sleep, so I thought I'd just, do something nice." "Excuse me?" I blinked, still half asleep. "Why are you in my room?" She smiled. "I told Justin I was going to feng shui the space. Your energy is super blocked. I didn't even know what to say." She'd already stripped my bed, my actual sheets, and was putting on new ones. Ones she brought from the linen closet downstairs, like I was some sleepover guest she was hosting. Then she sprayed something in the air. Lavender oil, I think, called it aura mist. At that point, I was done. I told her, "Lila, I need you to get out." Now, she pouted, like I'd rejected her birthday present. "I was just trying to help," she mumbled as she shuffled out, carrying my fitted sheet like a defeated ghost. The next morning, I pulled Justin aside and asked him what the hell was going on. His response? "She's just really nurturing, man. That's how she shows affection." I told him that if she ever came into my room uninvited again, especially at 3 in the morning, I'd be calling the landlord, and probably the cops. But that wasn't even the worst part, because a few days later I came home to find my clothes folded, inside her tote bag. She had done my laundry because it looked like I was behind on chores. Mind you, the clothes were clean. They were just in a hamper waiting to be hung. I told her she needed to stop touching my stuff. She said I was being ungrateful. Then she cried, full tears, in the kitchen, over socks. You know that feeling when someone's being so creepy, it's almost too awkward to even yell. That was me. It didn't feel like malice. It felt like she was role-playing a life we weren't living. Like she lived there and I was the uninvited guest. I brought it up in a house meeting. Justin got defensive. Lila claimed she was being punished for caring. My other roommate, Kyle, said she once vacuumed his room while he was on a Zoom call and called it vibe cleansing. Then came the breaking point. I woke up one morning to find all our toothbrushes color-coded and labeled. Lila had made labels, printed them, laminated them. She labeled our mugs, our cereal boxes, our chargers. She labeled my deodorant, and on the fridge, a weekly chore wheel, with her name on it. That's when Kyle snapped. He told Justin flat out, she doesn't live here, she doesn't pay rent, and if she touches one more person's stuff, he's reporting it to the landlord. And suddenly the whole plan fell apart. Justin tried to defend her, but even he couldn't explain the new chore schedule taped above the toilet titled Bathroom Blessings, or why she had a notebook full of moon phases and our energy cycles. Eventually, the landlord got wind. Guessing Kyle followed through on the threat, and reminded us that only listed tenants were allowed to stay more than 14 days per month, which meant Lila was now legally trespassing. She was banned, officially. Justin sulked for a while, but finally broke up with her after she left 12 voicemails in one night, asking if she could just drop off some homemade soup. You ever meet someone so intense it feels like you're accidentally in a Netflix thriller? That was Lila. One minute she's organizing your pantry, the next she's using your pillow because it matched her chakra. And yes, for the record, I did throw out those sheets. No regrets. But the next roommate didn't just invade space, he stole a kid's college fund. The college fund was something we'd all chipped in on. My sister, her husband, Jason, my parents, even me. It was set up right after my nephew Leo was born. A savings account in his name, contributions every birthday, every Christmas. We didn't come from money, but we figured if we started early and stuck to it, he'd have a shot at school without drowning in debt. Jason, the brother-in-law in question, was a CPA, so everyone naturally agreed he'd be the best person to manage the account. He was already doing taxes for half the family, and he volunteered, said it was an honor to be trusted. He even printed out spreadsheets once a year during the holidays to show us the balance, interest, and everything. Always neatly formatted, with little color-coded cells and future projections. So when Leo turned 18 and applied to college, everyone expected that moment of payoff. He got into his first choice, and that's when the floor dropped out. Because when my sister and Leo went to withdraw the funds to pay the deposit, the account was empty. At first they thought it was some sort of bank error, but the banker pulled the history and confirmed the worst. The withdrawals weren't recent. They'd started years ago. Small ones at first, then bigger. Over $47,000. Gone. Jason, standing right there in the meeting, turned pale, then red, then back to pale, and then, with the confidence of someone making it up as he went, said, I think OP had access too. Maybe it was a joint mistake, excuse me. I didn't even know the bank's name, let alone have access. But he repeated it, even said I had helped set up the online account login years ago and probably forgot. You ever have someone try to shove you under a bus in front of your whole family? It was surreal. I said no. I had nothing to do with it. I'd never had access. I wasn't even on the account legally, and I asked him to show me proof if he believed otherwise. He mumbled something about having to pull the old backups and check his records. That night, I got a call from my sister. She was crying. She'd been up all night trying to get into their joint financial files, and he had changed every password. Suddenly, she couldn't log into anything. Tax software, investment accounts, even the shared family Dropbox. That's when I told her something I'd kept quiet about. He'd asked me for money the year before. He'd come to me last summer, said he was in a temporary bind, and needed a few thousand to float some business expenses. I said no. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I was in a tight spot too. He didn't push it, just said no worries and walked away. But now, it clicked. That wasn't a one-off ask. That was him testing who he could lean on, and when nobody bailed him out, he used the one pot of money nobody was watching. Then came the breaking point. I asked him again for records, for proof. Anything that could validate his claim that I had accessed Leo's account. Instead, he emailed me a .pdf that looked off, like a forged access log. The dates didn't line up, the fonts were mismatched. I called the bank and asked if this was their official format. They said no, and then they asked if I wanted to open a fraud investigation. You better believe I did. What happened next? Nobody saw it coming. The bank launched an internal audit and found a long trail of logins from Jason's IP address. withdrawals going directly into his personal checking account, and fabricated notes in the transaction history field. He hadn't even tried to hide it well. He just assumed no one would check. When the bank called my sister to confirm, she broke down. She packed a bag, took Leo, and moved back in with our parents the same night. Jason? He doubled down, said it was all a misunderstanding, that he intended to pay it back before college, and that the market crash had interfered with his timeline. He even had the audacity to suggest we just let it go. Imagine robbing a teenager's future and calling it a timing issue. We didn't just let it go. My sister filed a civil suit for financial fraud. Leo wrote a victim statement. I gathered every email, spreadsheet, and note he'd ever sent us and handed it to the family attorney. And suddenly the whole plan fell apart. Turns out he'd been draining multiple accounts he managed, including one for my parents' retirement rollover. They hadn't even noticed yet. The total he'd taken? Just over $112,000. He's currently under investigation for embezzlement and wire fraud. The family has cut him off completely. Leo got a scholarship once word got out about what happened. Someone on the admissions team was so outraged they pushed it up the chain. Last I heard, Jason moved out of state and is trying to rebrand himself as a consultant. But good luck with that. You don't just walk away from this level of betrayal with a new LinkedIn title. It still makes my blood boil. He had one job: protect that money. Instead, he tried to lie, forge documents, and throw me under the bus to save himself. You almost have to admire the audacity, if it wasn't so pathetic. Ready for corporate revenge? Next up, a boss faked emails to fire a worker, and it backfired spectacularly. My boss, Cheryl, made every single workday feel like a game of Minesweeper on hard mode. You never knew which email would blow up in your face or which compliment came with a hidden landmine. And I wasn't alone. Our whole team had gotten used to whispering in Slack like we were in a spy movie. At first, I chalked it up to her being under pressure. New management, tighter deadlines, the usual. But over time, it became clear. She wanted me gone. I just couldn't figure out why. Then one morning, I got a calendar invite from HR titled Performance Review, Follow Up. No context, just a 30-minute block. When I showed up, they had a whole printout of complaints allegedly filed by coworkers against me. The weird part? The wording didn't sound like anyone on our team. Stuff like OP consistently undermines leadership in meetings and refuses to follow chain of command protocols. We don't even have a chain of command. It's a startup. I asked who had submitted these reports. HR said they were emailed anonymously but looked credible. They showed me the email headers. Guess who the emails traced back to? Yep, Cheryl. She'd been using a burner company alias to file complaints against me from herself, pretending they were anonymous co-workers. I felt my heart drop, and here's where it gets absurd. When I confronted her, carefully, privately, she smiled. Didn't deny it, just said, sometimes the company needs a nudge in the right direction. I don't know what kind of Bond villain origin monologue she thought she was giving, but I walked away knowing I couldn't just sit on this. That night, I started digging. Our internal system, the one we use to manage client notes, project logs, even HR forms, had a hilarious oversight. Once someone submitted a document, their username was stored in the metadata. Guess who hadn't turned that off? I pulled the source info on every single anonymous complaint. All of them linked to Cheryl's company credentials, screenshotted everything, backed it up on a thumb drive, uploaded a copy to a cloud folder with a timestamp, and then I got petty. The next morning, I drafted a fake resignation letter. Not from me, from her. I used her formatting style, mimicked her grammar patterns. She always signed off warmly, and saved it in our system as a submitted doc. It wasn't malicious. I wasn't sending it anywhere. Just parking it there. But I knew she regularly snooped through my files, even though she denied it. So I gave her something to find. Sure enough, a few hours later, I saw her door swing shut and the blinds drop. 20 minutes later, HR calls me in again. They ask if I've seen the resignation notice. I play dumb. What resignation? They show it to me and I laugh. That's not from me. No, they say. It's from Cheryl. She said she's leaving at the end of the week. I blink. She submitted it? Turns out, in her rush to get me out, she found the draft and, thinking it was my resignation, forwarded it to HR, as if she was catching me sneaking out quietly. She didn't even read it. The email she sent said, As you can see, she's planning to leave anyway. No need to waste resources on performance action. Let's just offboard quietly, and this is where patience finally snapped. I pulled out my thumb drive and said, actually, I think we do need to look at some resource waste. Plugged it into the conference room laptop and walked them through the receipts, complaint by complaint, metadata entry by metadata entry. At one point, I swear the HR manager audibly gasped. They asked me to step out while they reviewed. 30 minutes later, I came back to find Cheryl sitting in the lobby, red-faced, arguing on the phone. Security escorted her out before the end of the day, and that fake resignation? HR decided to honor it anyway. The official record shows she resigned, but internally everyone knows what went down. Someone even left a sticky note on her old office chair that read, "Warmly, you cannot make this up." Oh, and me? Got offered her position. Politely declined and took a different job elsewhere. One that didn't include workplace sabotage in the onboarding packet. It's honestly comical how perfectly that plan backfired. She tried to frame me and ended up signing her own pink slip. Now let's get extra petty. This next guy got revenge on his neighbor using a concrete vibrator. I don't think I've ever fantasized about revenge as much as I did during the months I lived under that guy. Let me paint you a picture. It's 2:13 a.m. You're just dozing off. The apartment is finally quiet. And then, boom. Bass so loud it shakes your molars. The guy above me thought he was a DJ. Every night, like clockwork, the party started just as everyone else was winding down. Subwoofers, stomping, yelling, music that sounded like an EDM goat sacrifice. It was relentless. And yeah, we tried everything. I knocked politely the first few times, then not so politely. Eventually I was met with, "It's my apartment too, bro." Classic. Building management? Useless. Their best solution was, "We'll send him a warning email," which I'm pretty sure he framed and hung next to his DJ controller. Earplugs? Didn't cut it. White noise machine? Got drowned out by what I think was a remix of someone screaming over Skrillex. So one night, after getting woken up for the third time that week by what sounded like a dance battle between hippos, I snapped. Not loudly, silently, calmly, like the beginning of a villain origin story. I remembered something from a construction video I saw once. Something called a concrete vibrator. It's a tool used to remove air pockets in poured concrete. Basically, it's a small industrial motor that violently shakes to a specific frequency, designed to travel through dense material, like, say, a floor. And here's where it gets absurd. I ordered one. I set it up directly underneath his bedroom, which I had mapped out based on noise patterns. Yes, I was keeping logs at this point. The descent into madness was complete. Mounted it to the ceiling beam with rubber dampeners so it didn't transfer back into my unit. Plugged it into a smart outlet and set the timer. 5 a.m. daily. Let's just say, the first morning, it worked beautifully. He went from blasting music all night to waking up in what must have felt like a localized earthquake. The best part? It only lasted 90 seconds, just long enough to jolt him out of REM sleep. Not long enough to seem obvious. And since it wasn't loud, just vibrational, nobody else noticed. I played it cool. Went about my day, but I could feel the change. By day 4, he was jumpy, muttering in the hallway, asking neighbors if they'd felt that tremor. Some politely said no, others just stared. By week 2, the guy looked like a shell of his former self. No more late-night sets, no impromptu rave sessions. He even stopped posting #GrindDon'tStop videos on his Instagram. Just blurry selfies with captions like, "Anyone else feel the floor shaking?" That's when everything unraveled. He started reporting the building to the city. Said the structure was unstable. Had an engineer come out. Nothing was found. Management dismissed him again. He got paranoid. I heard him arguing with his girlfriend about bad energy. Saw him burning sage in the hallway. At one point, I caught him putting a crystal grid on the floor, like he was trying to trap a ghost. You almost have to admire the commitment to not admitting you're being messed with. Then came the breaking point. A fire alarm went off one night. False alarm, burnt food. I stepped out and saw him standing there, barefoot, holding a duffel bag and his cat in a crate, and he looked at me like I was the ghost. Next morning, he was gone. Didn't tell anyone. Just broke lease, bailed early, left the building group chat without a word. And me, I unscrewed the concrete vibrator, patched the beam, and tossed the thing in my garage like it was a retired weapon of war. The best part? No one ever suspected a thing. To this day, the only people who know are me, and now you. We're heading toward the end, but the drama's not done. This next woman staged a fake robbery, just to get sympathy from her followers. She showed up crying, mascara smudged, holding a cracked phone and wearing a hoodie that definitely wasn't hers. The caption under her Instagram story read, "They took everything. I'm traumatized. Please, just pray for me." And people did. Like, a lot of people. Comments, reposts, DMs from verified accounts, and within 24 hours, a GoFundMe with almost $10,000 in donations. Here's the thing. I've known Brielle for years. We used to be close. Like, split a bottle of wine and ugly cry kind of close. She was dramatic, sure, but entertaining. Her brand, if you could call it that, was trauma bait meets spiritual girl boss. Think manifestation quotes on top of thirst traps and reels of her healing journey set to indie music. And I genuinely felt bad for her, at first. She claimed someone had broken into her apartment while she was on a retreat. Said they took her laptop, cameras, some designer bags, and her massive flat-screen TV. Then she posted a teary video thanking everyone for their support and promising to use this experience to uplift other survivors. But that wasn't even the worst part. Less than a week later, she posted another video, this time in her newly refreshed space. The caption, "When the universe takes something away, it's because something better is coming. Blessed." Except, there it was. Her TV. Same model, same sticker residue in the corner, same faint scratch down the bezel. I knew it was hers. She even accidentally panned to her old ring light in the background. The one she said was stolen. At first, I figured maybe she just replaced everything really fast. Maybe insurance came through, or she had secret savings. But then she went live later that week showing off her new setup, and she slipped. Said something about reorganizing her gear, and how honestly I didn't even have to move stuff, just reset. And that's when everything unraveled. Because she'd claimed she lost everything. Furniture, tech, her clothes, even her passport, apparently. So I started digging, quietly. I checked her GoFundMe again, over $14,000 by then. I looked closer at her videos, timestamps, audio glitches, subtle details, and it became clear. Nothing had moved. The apartment was never robbed. Not a single thing had changed, except the story she told about it. I reached out to a mutual friend who had dog sat for her once. He told me she'd called him right after the break-in, asking if he knew how to factory reset a MacBook. The same MacBook that was supposedly stolen. And here's where it gets absurd. I reported her, quietly through the GoFundMe fraud portal. I included screenshots of the robbery post, clips from her later video where the TV is clearly visible, and quotes from the live stream where she contradicts herself. It didn't take long. Within a week, GoFundMe froze the campaign and flagged her account. People started asking questions in the comments, which she immediately deleted. But the damage was already done. A few days later, 2 of her sponsors pulled out publicly, citing integrity concerns. Another influencer stitched one of her old videos with a side-by-side comparison of her supposedly new gear and the stolen stuff. It went viral. And from there, everything fell apart. She tried to play it off like she'd been misunderstood. Said she was just spiritually robbed and that the GoFundMe had been misinterpreted. Claimed she never explicitly said she'd been physically robbed, just that she felt violated. Imagine being this confidently wrong. By that point, the fraud report had already gone up the chain. Her page was shut down and someone, I don't know who, sent the footage and screenshots to her local PD. They opened an investigation into donation fraud. Not sure if she was formally charged, but let's just say her vibe shifted. No more healing videos, no more lightworker content. She went private, then deactivated everything. Poof, gone. And yeah, she tried texting me once saying, I thought we were friends. But honestly, we were, until she decided lying for clout and cash was more important than, not committing fraud. I guess some people would rather burn down their own credibility than admit the truth. Our second to last story is a short one, but might be the most satisfying bit of karma yet. She showed up to the family brunch already in full tantrum mode. No, hello. No, how are you? just stormed in like she was holding a press conference. "You owe us," she said, jabbing her finger at me across the table. "After everything your uncle and I did for this family, the least you can do is help send Trevor to school." Mind you, Trevor is my cousin, her 17-year-old son who once tried to sell weed at a funeral. This kid had been kicked out of 2 private schools already, and somehow she thought the problem was underfunding. Let me backtrack a little. My Aunt Karen, yes, that's her real name, which feels cosmically appropriate, has always had this unshakable belief that because I make decent money now, I'm supposed to bankroll the entire extended family like I'm some sort of broke person. Redistribution charity. I run a tech company. I worked for it. They watched from the sidelines. So when I said no to paying Trevor's 3rd round of private school tuition, $28,000 by the way, she absolutely lost it. Accused me of being selfish, ungrateful, and disrespectful to the family legacy. What family legacy? The legacy of parking on lawns and fighting over who stole a blender in 2009? Anyway, I told her no, calmly, firmly, once. She didn't take that well. Cue the group texts, the guilt-tripping phone calls from distant cousins I hadn't heard from in years. Even my mum got dragged into it. Karen left her a 4-minute voicemail sobbing about how I was robbing Trevor of his future. That's when everything unraveled. I decided, okay, you want a contribution? You'll get one. But I never said it'd be usable, so I pulled out an old Monopoly box from my closet. You know, the deluxe edition with the fat stack of fake hundreds? Spent 2 hours filling a manila envelope with pristine, brightly colored bills. I even made a fake invoice on Microsoft Word that said, "Payment for Trevor's entitlement fund. Enjoy." Then I sent it FedEx overnight. Priority. She got it the next day. And her reaction? Beautiful chaos. First came the photos. She posted them on Facebook, thinking she was exposing me. "This is how my nephew repays us," she wrote, next to a picture of the Monopoly money spilled dramatically across her dining table. But instead of sympathy, the comments turned against her. People were quoting the invoice. Someone even made it into a meme. A friend of mine screen capped a reply that just said, "Should have bought Boardwalk when you had the chance." But then came the breaking point. She actually tried to sue me. I'm not kidding. She marched into small claims court, claiming I promised financial aid and then committed emotional fraud by mocking her with fake currency. The judge, and I cannot make this up, asked her if she thought Monopoly money was legal tender. She said it was the principal. Case dismissed in under 10 minutes, and that probably should have been the end of it. But of course, Karen wasn't going to take a court loss quietly. She posted a 3-minute rant video on Facebook that ended with the line, "You'll regret disrespecting your elders when your children turn against you too. I don't even have kids. You almost have to admire the audacity." For the record, Trevor ended up going to community college, which honestly seemed like the right move all along. He's doing fine now, got a part-time job, and even messaged me a few months later apologizing for his mum's behavior. Said he thought the Monopoly prank was kind of hilarious. Weirdly, that made it worth it. I never heard from Karen again in person, but every once in a while I'll get tagged in a passive-aggressive Facebook meme about selfish millennials or family betrayal. It's like emotional spam mail. But still, every time I see that old Monopoly set sitting in the closet, I smile a little. And now, one final story to end the night. About a woman who faked her own death for views. She was the kind of girl who lived for the algorithm. Every moment of her life was a curated performance. Every outfit had a mood board. Every coffee order came with a caption. And every authentic moment was secretly staged twice. We met in college, drifted in and out of the same social circles, and for a while I actually liked her. She was funny, creative, always knew the right lighting, and always had a plan to go viral. But somewhere around the 500,000 follower mark, she crossed a line, and then just kept sprinting past it. She called it storyline branding. I called it lying, faking boyfriends, pretending to live in cities she didn't live in, claiming she'd landed brand deals that were just affiliate links. The usual influencer sleight of hand, except it got darker. Then, one day, she vanished. Her socials went silent. A few cryptic posts about feeling lost, then nothing, for months. I didn't think much of it at first. People burn out. They rebrand. They disappear to Tulum for a spiritual reset and come back with a new filter pack. But Then came the funeral post. It wasn't from her account. It was from her sister. A black and white video montage with moody piano music, clips of her doing hair tutorials, jumping into pools, laughing in slow motion. The caption said she had died tragically in an accident and requested people honor her legacy by following her for one final goodbye. It was absurdly manipulative, and it worked. The post blew up, millions of views. Hashtag Gone Too Soon started trending. Her follower count doubled. People made tribute videos, reaction TikToks, candlelight duets. I didn't buy it for a second. For starters, this sister had her same editing style, used the same fonts, and just happened to tag a bunch of sponsorships in the caption. Right, because that's exactly what grieving families do. But the internet doesn't do due diligence, it does drama. So she died until I saw her. I was in a random gas station 2 towns over, buying a Gatorade and a bag of chips, when I caught a glimpse of her in the corner. Alive, very much not dead, in leggings and an oversized hoodie, sunglasses on but unmistakable. She was checking out at the counter, talking to the cashier like a normal person. I froze for a second, not because I was shocked she was alive, but because I realized just how far she'd been willing to take this. I followed her out, didn't say anything, snapped a photo of her walking to her car, got her license plate. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I made my own video, opened with a screen grab of the funeral montage, then cut to the date on her death, followed that with the footage of her walking out of the gas station. Time stamped, 2 months later. Then I dropped the kicker. Her license plate linked back to a car still registered in her name. And here's where it gets absurd. She saw the video and had the audacity to comment on a burner account, claiming I was harassing her grieving family. She tried to say the person at the gas station was her twin cousin. I couldn't make this up if I tried. The internet didn't buy it. Within 24 hours, the video had over 5 million views. People started combing through her old content for clues. They found videos filmed after her death with background details that didn't match the timeline. A few even found listings on Fiverr for people offering fake memorial video edits, and one of them used the exact same template as hers. She got fully exposed, sponsors dropped her, people mass-reported her accounts. TikTok finally banned her main page. She tried hopping over to Instagram with a new handle, claiming to be someone else no less, but the internet remembered. Eventually, one of her former influencer friends came forward and said she knew it was fake from the start. Apparently, this girl thought it would reset her brand and make her come back bigger than ever. Her whole plan was to resurrect herself in 6 months under a new identity with a massive reveal. Yup, she literally tried to stage a digital resurrection. You'd think the story would end with her being humbled or going offline forever. But, nah, she pivoted. She's now trying to be a controversial life coach. Her current bio, reinvention is survival. You almost have to admire the commitment to the bit, and that's where we'll leave it tonight. If you've made it this far into the chaos, you've absolutely earned a peaceful rest. Sweet dreams, everyone. And remember, karma may take its time, but it never forgets.